Can I get a mic check from the fifth floor just real quick?
Check, check, check.
Perfect, thank you. We are live on YouTube as well as YouTube TV.
Good evening. I'm going to call this meeting to order. I'll ask the clerk to announce the meeting and the roll call. Clerk?
Good evening and thank you. You are hereby notified that I have called a special session of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County and Kansas City, Kansas on Thursday, April 7, 2022 at 4 p.m. for an executive session in the fifth floor conference room, 701 North 7th Street, Kansas City, Kansas regarding litigation, followed by a special session to be conducted virtually at 5:30 p.m. for a presentation on the 2023 budget options. Roll call. Burrough. Townsend. McKiernan.
Here.
Ramirez.
Here.
Johnson. Kane. Markley.
Here.
Stites.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Bynum.
Here.
Garner.
Here. At this time, the commission will go into executive session for consultation with legal counsel regarding litigation. Do we have a motion for an executive session?
Mayor, I move that the commission go into executive session until 5 p.m. to consult with our attorneys and to discuss matters, confidential matters related to pending claims and litigation as permitted under the Kansas Open Meetings Act, and that staff designated by the county administrator be present to participate in this discussion, and that we reconvene in open session at 5 p.m. here in the fifth floor conference room.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Roll call. Burrough. Townsend. McKiernan.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Johnson. Kane. Markley.
Aye.
Stites.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
We are now going to executive session. We will reconvene to special session meeting upon completion.
It's on the notes. You can just say it.
You just say adjourn, we're coming back at 5:30.
Recording here, so I'm not sure if we're right, but it's recording.
We ready?
Yep. Okay, thank you. We've exited from executive session. We are now back in regular session, and we are now adjourned until 5:30 to begin another special session. Thank you.
I want to make sure I wasn't skipping something.
We are live on YouTube as well as UGTV.
Good evening. We're going to now call the special session back in order. Tonight, we have a presentation from our Finance Department regarding the 2023 budget options and proposals. I'll turn it over to our administrator for an overview.
Mayor, if I may, I need to call roll.
Please.
Thank you. Roll call. Burrows. Townsend.
Here.
Got you. Townsend.
Here.
McKiernan.
Here.
Ramirez.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Kane. Markley.
Here.
Stites.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Bynum.
Here.
Turner.
Here. Thank you, clerk. Again, this is a special session, and we come back to order, and it will be a presentation from our Finance Department regarding the 23 budget options and proposal. And I'm going to turn this over to our administrator, Ms. Cheryl Harrison-Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Cheryl Harrison Lee, Interim County Administrator. If you'll go to the first slide, please. Exactly. Pencils. So while we're getting to the first slide, at our first strategy session with the commission, Mr. Ed O'Malley, along with other staff from the Kansas Leadership Center, we're here to talk about various strategies and the goals. This past week, Mr. O'Malley had an opportunity to follow up with most of the commission. He did inform me that there are a few commission members that he's not had an opportunity to talk with. However, the preliminary feedback that he has provided from the commissioners that he was able to talk with included 3 themes that are starting to surface. They revolve around infrastructure and facilities, looking at enhanced customer service, and a focus on our workforce with development, retention, enhancement. The themes that have been identified are aligned with some of the work that is taking place in terms of just organizational assessment, looking at how to successfully achieve the commission direction, particularly as it relates to customer service and workforce development. Tonight, the intention is to have our CFO provide a brief review of the revenue projections, kind of a baseline, have you all look at the goals and the vision, as well as provide some feedback on whether or not these goals are still goals as presented that you would like to move forward on. With that, I'll turn it over to the CFO, who will highlight first the objectives for tonight and then walk through a brief presentation.
So good evening. I'm Kathleen Von Atchen, the Chief Financial Officer. And there's 3 things we want to achieve this evening with you all and for this special session. The first one is to give you provide you a long-term financial forecast of the general fund, the combined general fund and the city, county, and the parks general fund, so that you can see where we are headed given the current economic climate, and then and so that you can use that information for further policy discussions. The second thing we would love to get from you is receive feedback on actions that would impact our budget calendar. So as you know, there is a bill that was passed last year, Senate Bill 13, that required local governments to hold a public hearing if they wish to exceed the property tax revenue that we collected in the current fiscal year. So if we are going to hold that public hearing and exceed the revenue neutral rate, as they call, then that provides us about 2 months more time in our budget season to have discussions and to adopt a budget. If we are not going to exceed, then the budget is due sometime in the the middle of or end of the middle or beginning of August. So we'd like to have some direction on which way that's going to go, because we the staff needs to plan for that. The third thing we'd like is feedback on the timing of a potential sales tax measure that is being discussed that would address the aging infrastructure, facilities, and roads. So those are the three things we'd like to achieve this evening at the special session. Okay. So I'm going to launch into the baseline forecast. All right. And so just starting off, the first slide I'm presenting here is what we expect to see in the 2023 revenues for the city and the county general fund. And I'm just focusing on those two funds. And why I don't have them combined is you can see how different they are in terms of their revenue diversification. So on the city side, which the total is estimated at $163 million, and that number does not include annual debt appropriation. That's roughly $10 million a year. We never use that debt appropriation because all of our economic development projects generate enough revenue to pay their own debt service. All right. But on the city side, you can see that we're expecting of the 163 million, 31. Help me if I see it wrong. I think it says 31, maybe 34% is sales tax. 34%. Franchise tax is. I'm so sorry. I can't read
26.
it. 26. Thank you. And property tax is at 19, I believe. Whereas if you see on the county side, the property tax is 63%, which is a lot more than what we collect on the city side. So depending on what revenue action you undertake, it really has a dramatic impact on one fund versus the other. The other thing is that if one revenue source grows at a greater rate than another, then it really positively or negatively impacts another that given fund. So for example, right now, property tax is estimated to grow at a greater clip than sales tax. So the county general fund is faring better that has a better outlook right now. Okay, so I'm going to try to get through this real quick so we can get to the real meat of the discussions and open it up for you all. Just a reminder that right now, the city mill rate is actually 15th among the 26 first-class cities. So it's a little bit of a misnomer to say that Wyandotte County has the really high rates, because actually we're right in the middle. And not only that, but on the county side, we're one of the lowest at 96th or 95th percent, or 95th of 105 counties. So really low mill rates at the moment across both on the city and the county side. So the assumptions, you've seen this slide before. I've updated it for more recent economic data, where the red highlights are basically those areas where I've modified. Now, you might have remembered this slide from the last budget workshop we did last August. And so these are the changes from that August workshop. The changes I've made is that CPI is still projected to be 5% in 23, 3.5% in 24, and then 2% thereafter. I have also estimated that assessed value is projected to be, at the moment, 12.3% in 2023. And remember, when I say assessed value, I'm talking about not just residential commercial, I'm also talking about the utility, which is assessed by all the utilities, and railroads, which are assessed by the state, as well as motor vehicle and personal property taxes. So all of those have different growth rates, and the combined blended amount is about 12.3%. And then in the out years, I'm projecting a more conservative 6%. On the revenue side, I did adjust up the use tax. It was at 3.3%, and I adjusted it up to 4.4%. So it's growing faster than sales tax right now. And on the expenditure side, that labor, their salaries and benefits, I did have it at 2% there after 2024. I changed that to 3.3%, just to be a little more realistic. And then health benefits, I think I had that at 7 before, and I've changed that to 5.75. Okay, so all of these,
Commissioner McKiernan.
Thank you. So on what basis do we adjust down from 7 to 5.75 on health benefits?
Oh, the reason is because in the past, we've used 7% for increases in our health benefits because during the recession, the fund balance of the health benefits internal service fund was being utilized to balance the budget. And so after the recession, that fund balance needed to be replenished. And so they replenished it little by little with that higher percentage rate in order to get more income into the revenue to match the expenses. We're now at a point where that fund is actually pretty close to whole and not in a deficit position. So we don't need that much more. We don't need as much as it was before.
So I've been on the Employee Benefits Committee for years, and I've really seen no evidence that the financial picture is improving at all. It would seem to me that with increasing premiums, increasing costs of care, and especially our unfunded pension liability, would seem to me that that number should be growing rather than shrinking. And correct me if I'm wrong. I'd love to be wrong.
Yeah. So yeah, no, the fund balance for the net position for that internal service fund for health benefits is actually expected to be in a positive position at the end of 21 or not 2022 actually. So that's the first time in like 10 years. So
is the unified government's contribution to employee health care expected to go down in 2023?
That's exactly what we are representing
So
here.
you are projecting that our contribution to healthcare will go down
Yes.
in the face of rising costs.
Well, I don't know. So we have, right now I'm projecting it based on assuming that there's roughly a 5% increase in medical costs, which I looked up on the internet was actually the inflationary rate for healthcare claims in 2023. So I'm matching the CPI level.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. So I did kind of look at it. So
I got a question, just
Okay.
to follow up on Commissioner McKiernan.
uh-huh.
So you came up with that projection. What is that predicated on? How did you come to that conclusion and that baseline? How did you arrive to that assessment to follow up on Commissioner McKierran's
Sure.
question?
So I have a long-range financial plan, a Municast model that it's the same model that we use for the general fund. It's exactly the same model, only it has 10 years of data. All that data is not in that financial model. And so that's, so we update that every year. And I confer with the healthcare consultant that we have, Brian Johnson. And, we put our heads together and do some research. And of course, this forecast is all based on current estimates at the time. It's just an estimate.
Okay, Commissioner Kane.
We are literally going through this right now where I work. And we're projecting everything to go up. In fact, we're merging two to help the hurting one. So I'm not sure I agree with this. Because and we have the same amount of people, same amount of sicknesses, and we have to bail out the one that's struggling, and we have to raise ours. And you're right, I've never seen one go down. I've always seen them go up. I mean, if it needs to stay the same, that's fine. So we can keep money in there for our employees in case something catastrophic happens. But I'm not sure I agree with this. Well, I know I don't agree with it.
Well, that's good. So honestly, 1% difference, it works out to about $700,000 across the entire UG. And we're only talking about the general fund. The general fund is probably half of that 700,000. So we're not really talking about a lot of money here. So if you want to change it to 7%, it really doesn't make a really big difference. But I'm happy to change the estimates however you. The reason I'm showing this actually, to get your feedback on whether you think they're reasonable, but also to let you know that at this point, that's what represents the numbers that you're about to look at.
So would it be safe to say that's a guesstimate and not an actual accurate assessment of projected cost increases moving forward?
No, I really did base that the 5.75% for 2023 based on research that I did. Yeah. On a specific medical index.
Is there any way?
It might have been done a month or two ago, but maybe things have changed since then.
Is there any way you can drill down and get the commission more specifics to answer some of their concerns in regards to how you arrived to that estimate and that projection?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so as a result of all the various assumptions, there are, I wanted to provide you the numbers, right? Of course, I'm not going to go over these, so you have them in your packet. But oftentimes I try to just go straight to the fund balance graphs. But I remember lots of you in the prior meetings have said, hey, I want the numbers behind those graphs. So that's what this is, all right? So of course, this is what they call an income statement. And the top part is all the income coming in. And then the bottom part are all the expenses by category. And those lines at the bottom are the fund balance. And the fund balance it's not a cash balance, it's modified accrual fund balances as reflected in the CAFR, or the annual comprehensive financial report, or ACFR.
Commissioner Davis.
Oh, boy. Okay. So I'm trying to find the words here. So when we look at the tax revenue for 2022, it's about 198, 199. Then it jumps to 211. Then it jumps to 210, 230, 240, 250. What is that from? Is this assuming the sales tax that the mayor wants is generated? Is that the additional the tax revenue numbers?
No, the sales tax measure that's being contemplated right now, that is separate from the general fund entirely. That would be reflected in a different capital project kind of debt service fund that would not be part of the general fund. And that's because that sales tax measure is a dedicated special tax. So when it's a dedicated special tax, it doesn't go into the general fund because the general is just general.
Gotcha. Okay. So then
The reason the increases occur, and I was going to point that out, was because the federal government provided us with ARPA revenue replacement funds. And so you'll see that green, box up there in the revenue under intergovernmental revenues. That's where the ARPA revenue replacement money is sitting. And it's only going to come in those 2 years. And then after that, in 2023, it no longer is coming in.
Well, I guess my worry here is when we get to, I see the ARPA boxes for sure. Appreciate that. When we go to 2023 and then 2024, our tax revenue, that projection is almost a $10 million increase every year. Where is that coming from? Like, what is within your forecast?
Oh, well,
Like
that includes all tax revenue, including property tax, sales tax, alcohol tax, the franchise tax, all kinds of things. So, and I do have, that's why I talked a little bit about the revenues on that assumption page. But that is by far the largest category. And I mean, certainly it would be really nice if my model actually had those various taxes broken out, but it just isn't set up that way. But that's what that is.
Yeah.
So it includes for 2023, it includes the projected assessed value that Matt will, the county appraiser provided me as well as all of you. And so, which reflects roughly a 12% increase in assessed value. I've got revenue growing by 12%, 12.5%, because not only because of the entire assessed value, includes those other categories that are not growing as fast as residential and commercial, but it also includes a delinquency factor, which the delinquency factor is around about 5.7%. So you have to take that out. So, property tax, and then also it includes the sales tax. I should probably go back. See, sales tax, which is I have growing at about 3% a year. Use tax growing at about 4.3%, et cetera.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
So one of the things, Commissioner, as you look at this, as we get those increased potential property tax numbers from the appraiser's office, is how do you want to address the mill as you get the projected increase from property taxes? Do you keep it the same, or do you look at maybe adjusting that for the residents?
Right, so right now this is based on, no changes. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Stites.
So in our appraisal value is, if I remember right, was looking at around a $13 million assessed value increase, correct? From last year to this year.
Yeah, it's, so if we did the revenue neutral rate, we would lose 13 million, but that's across all the city, county general funds, as well as the county levy funds. Yeah, so yes, that is correct.
13 million.
Yeah, but it's not just these funds, it's also the levy funds
Okay.
and the debt service funds.
So my question would be, so what happens, let's say, and that's assuming that if we did the R&R, which at an 8.5 mil reduction,
Yeah.
what happens when people appeal their taxes and they win? And now our 13 million is 10 million. Obviously I'm just making these numbers up.
Okay.
But then what happens when we've reduced that mill by 8.5 and now we've went too far? So how is that projected?
So the county appraiser was kind enough to provide his preliminary estimates. You understand, this is only March, right? Or well, now we're in April, but those are very, very preliminary. His final estimates come in June. And that's what you base your budget on. So this revenue neutral rate or the number of mills that you're talking about right now, it's 8.5 or whatever it is. It'll be slightly different once Matt comes back with his final and he provides that to the UG clerk. Then there's also further appeals and discussions that occur past June. And so the final assessed value comes back from the appraiser's office and the clerks in October. And then October is when it is completely finalized.
And if I'm not mistaken, so when you set that mill levy, we can set a max mill levy. We can't go backwards.
That's
We
right.
can't go above. We can always go back, but we can set a max mill levy, but not go backwards, correct? Thank you.
Administrator.
Yes, and typically, Commissioner, also what jurisdictions will do is assume a certain percentage of collection. So instead of assuming that you're going to have a 100% collection rate, you're assuming a little bit lower than that.
Yeah, our rates.
That's at 5.
Right.
Yeah. Which used to be a lot higher. So it's doing really well. People are paying their taxes. Okay. So the other tricky thing here, so on the expenditure side, the expenditures, so you remember that there quite a bit of revenue replacement money was dropped into the revenue estimates and but wasn't necessarily budgeted or allocated entirely as part of the last year's budget process. So as a result, there's a lot of funds that are not spent yet. And so this 2022 column is an estimate, and it assumes that as part of this upcoming amended 2022 budget process, you will actually appropriate the revenue replacement fund. So that's why you see that big number, that $21.9 million. That's assuming that you spend it on one-time items. And I just stuck it in capital outlay because it, kind of made sense. It doesn't mean that I'm going to tell you to do it that way. I'm just saying. So I just stuck it in there, assuming you're going to spend it on one-time items and that it's all going to be appropriated in 2022. So that's what that is. Now, the rest of the lines, those are all based on what is the current approved capital maintenance and improvement program. So you approved that as part of the budget last year. Those are the numbers that were approved last year. All right. So those aren't, numbers I just made up. So those are really approved. So.
Commissioner Johnson.
Commissioner Townsend has her hand raised.
Thank you.
Commissioner Townsend. I'm sorry.
That's all I had.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. Ms. Von Etchen, right now, there's just one number I'm looking at, and if you'd be so kind as to explain its significance before talk about revenue neutral, raising, lowering, holding the same. Explain to me on this chart the significance and meaning of what I'm looking at and interpreting as a $5.2 million deficit in 2023. What is that number?
Yes, well, so that's the number between that when you add up the number, the revenue number minus the expenditure number gives you that revenue over or under, or the net margin, right?
Oh, I understand that, but I guess
Yes.
what I'm saying is,
So
are we looking at what currently, if we did nothing, this is your projection that in the year 2023, we are actually going to take a hit for 5.2 million.
that's right. So this forecast, given these assumptions, projects that the use of fund balance of $5.2 or $5.3 million in 2023. And then that number, that use declines. This is one-time use, right? It happens again in 2024, but to a lesser extent. Then after that, you can notice that it catches up and we're actually growing fund balance.
Okay, so, all right, this 5.2 million and the projected 2024, all things remaining the same. What this is telling us, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we are going to have to dig into, I don't want to use the word reserves, but basically our fund. We are not growing in budget year 2023. That's the projection currently, right?
That's right. And so if you look down below at the very, very bottom, you'll notice that there's this number called the amount over or under the 2-month target reserve, right? The 2-month target reserve, it takes 2 months of total, takes the total expenditure and uses line and divides it by 12 and then multiplies by 2 months, right? And so, and whatever that number is, less what we have in reserves is the amount over or under. And so you can see it's positive. So in 2023, we still can eat into the reserves to the tune of 5.3 million, but we still are in excess of the 2 months target reserve for as per our policy.
Okay, so you're saying in 2023, the 4.3 million is still, we are still meeting our 2-month reserve with that number.
That's right.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Stites, District 7.
Commissioner Stites.
So that, what percentage, I know that we try to target a 15 to 16, 18 percentage, but at what percentage does that reduction keep our fund balance at?
Well, you know, that's
and what we're statutorily required to keep is what, or is what?
So in the about 4 slides ahead is that it has that percentage. So I don't remember what it is.
I'll wait.
But statutorily, there isn't any statutory requirement for our reserve. The reserve policy was set by the commission in 2018 when we rewrote our financial policies. And it says that we should strive for a 3-month reserve. 1 month would be for emergencies and 2 months would be to handle our operating liquidity needs. And what does that mean? Liquidity needs means we don't want to bounce any checks. So we make sure we have enough money in the coffers to pay our bills. All right. So if you take let's see, 2 into 12 months, it works out to about 16.7%. So that's what that is. If you take 3 into 12, then it's 25%.
Mayor, Commissioner Burrough has his hand raised as well.
Commissioner Burrough, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine, Mayor. I'm listening to the discussion. When I look at these numbers, and Kathleen, a couple things, if I may. I'm looking at the personnel expenditures, and in 2020, they went down to 154, but in 2021, they jumped nearly $12 million. And then in 2022, they jump up to 176, another 10 million. We've had $26 million in salary increases or in personnel costs. Can you share with me and the commission
Yes.
why such a jump in personnel costs?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So during the pandemic, the state of Kansas governor's office, Spark Committee, allocated, I don't know, in total $37 million for pandemic relief. A bunch of it was spent, by the public health department, but a whole bunch of it also, I can't remember exactly how much, but I'm thinking around 7 or 8 million of it was actually given to the city general fund, city county general fund, as a public safety reimbursement. And so that's why, and so those dollars were reimbursing those costs. So that's why that cost went down in 2020. So that's about 7 or 8 million of the difference between 19 and 20. And that's why when you compare it with 21 and there's such a big jump, that's why.
Okay,
Does that help?
Yes, it does. So what you're stating is
Oh, yeah.
moving forward, we're going to
There was also furloughs that we instituted.
So
Alan
moving
House
forward,
could explain it more.
okay. So moving forward, if I may, Commissioner Burrows, at-large District 2, the new cost for personnel is going to run about just right around 10 million per year. That's what your forecast projects if I read the numbers all the way out the way that I do across the expenses there in 23, 24. But I want to get down to the 21,908 in expenditures. You put those in the capital outlay and you gave your reasons for doing so. But in our expenses, we don't show spending all of that money. We show spending 12 million and then 10 million. And that affects basically the 5.264 million. That is not necessarily out of our reserves, so to speak. That money is in that 21,908 is basically a reserve over $3,000, over $3 million. So you've added roughly $18 million to that account, 17 million, 18 million. And so if we're not spending all of it, it's really a cost avoidance of 5.264 million.
So no, the $21.9 million is includes ARPA money we deposited in 2021 and 2022. We're now spending it in 2022. It's just an estimate. I'm not sure what you're referring. If, I suppose potentially the departments won't spend all of it in 1 year, but I'm assuming that they do.
Okay,
So
go ahead, Kathleen.
Yeah, well, we're assuming that they will spend all those funds in the next 6 months, or we will move it over to the capital project fund where they can continue to spend it in the future year.
Right.
And this is just the timing of when those funds is spent is really just an assumption in order to do forecasting. I wanted to isolate the 5-year period of 23 through 27 so that it wasn't impacted by ARPA or those big one-time monies. And of course, during the budget season, you all will be making these decisions as you go. But in order to do forecasting, you had to make certain assumptions.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Is this the first time the commission has seen this projection overall, or has this already gone through ED&F steps?
No, this is very first time. Yep. So it's a continuation of the projections that you've been presented in the past. Yeah. It also includes the authorized position for the fire labor contract.
Okay. All right.
Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you go back to the assumptions or so these are the assumptions used for the following graph.
That's right.
These are the assumptions. And so,
Just a few of them.
okay. And so increases in certain economic performances, correct? And then, but also increases in revenue.
Yeah.
And then some modifications to possible expenditures. I'm trying to make sure I understand the baseline that we're looking at, I guess.
Yes.
And so from these forecast assumptions, have you factored in all of the increases that we, the commission, have authorized in the last 6 months, which are numerous? Are those in here?
They are.
They are.
So you remember in the past, I've given a full year, hour and a half presentation on the long range financial forecast, with a book and a document and such.
Yes.
Well, the intention of tonight is not to give you that level of detail, and I'm happy to produce that in the next, few weeks if you would like to read more about the detail of the forecast. The real intention tonight is to see, given these assumptions, if we were to do a revenue neutral rate, for example, how would that look?
Right.
Or if we were to do an adjustment to the pilot, how would that look?
And I appreciate that because I think that's where I was. I'm looking at this and I know that we're all kind of diving in, but actually there's more to come. You're using it to show us something else.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to get too bogged down in it, but I wanted to just stop for a minute and make sure I understood what specifically it is I'm seeing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So,
it
okay.
includes all the labor contracts that have been approved and
those-
recent economic activity, because there
Okay.
really has been a lot of
Okay.
changes.
I mean, I know that I apologize. I keep interrupting you. I
Yes,
know that
no,
one
that's
thing that we have to constantly remember in our role is if I add or take away, we'll say, in 1 year, I'm adding that for every year from there on out. And that's what's on my mind.
Yeah.
Is obviously you're a CFO, so you're going to do that. But I certainly am making sure I understand this document, the next slide that we're looking at and what all is in it. So
Yeah.
thank you.
And by the way, this is the combined. The next slide is how this looks different between the city and the county. So
Mayor, Commissioner Townsend has her hand raised as well.
Commissioner Townsend?
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't know, was Commissioner Bynum, had she concluded her comments?
Yes, she's done.
Okay, I didn't know she was completely done. I just wanted to say, Ms. Van Etchen, I'm looking, like I said, at this overview, and I did, before we get too far gone, and you may want to elect to go back later since you're moving forward. The slide, several slides that preceded this, where you had the pie chart and you showed the difference between property tax revenue. That's it. Okay. Just refresh my recollection or explain for me, because I like to start the basics almost every year, why the revenue on the county side is so much higher than on the city.
Oh, sure. Well, the reason is that there's a 1% sales tax on the city side, and that's all for Kansas City, Kansas. And then there's also a 1% sales tax on the on the county side. And so the county is only getting, so that makes a big difference here, because the county, the sales tax for the county gets split between the various cities within the county. And so the county fund gets far less of the total than than the 1%. So that's why, so not only that, but so the city is getting, near, I'm not sure, remember how much, but nearly double what the county's getting on sales tax. So
Okay.
that's
well,
one of the reasons.
If I
Second
said-
reason is it collects about roughly 35 million in franchise taxes, which many of you refer to as the pilot, from the BPU and then also from cable and television and telephone and other utility services. So those monies are a city tax and are not a county tax. So that's why. And then also on the city side, they get quite a bit more in charges for services. For example, for solid waste or trash. So there's a myriad of, the city has a more diversified revenue portfolio than the county does. County's 100% or like 63% reliant on property tax, which is very common. It's very common structure in counties across the state.
Okay, I see what I'm doing. I'm looking at numbers. You're looking at percentages. I get it now. You're just
That's right.
saying that the percentages
Yeah.
of the types of money that is received by the county, 82%, well, no, 63% is property tax in that time. Thank you. You've answered my question.
Commissioner Stites.
Commissioner Stites?
Commissioner Stites, District 7. Kathleen, so you said that the pilot, or what some call, or the franchise fee, is a city tax that only goes to to Kansas City, Kansas, not the county, correct?
That's right.
So how does the money that is generated from the Edwardsville Bonner pilot or franchise fee, where does that go?
I don't know about that. I guess BPU sends it to you all. I don't.
What does that mean, you all?
To the Edwardsville and Bonner Springs. So
They send it to them?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to your question. I don't know of any franchise tax that's relative to Bonner Springs or Edwardsville.
Bonner Springs and Edwardsville both pay a pilot.
Well, then if those residents pay it, then the BPU sends it to your cities.
Commissioner, are you saying that there are residents in Bonner and Edwardsville who receive their utilities from the Board of Public Utilities?
I don't think that's the case. Is that true? I don't know.
But Edwardsville receives water from BPU.
Well, if your city assesses, if Edwardsville assesses a pilot as part of their bill, then the BPU sends it to the city of Edwardsville.
Okay, well, I'd like to do a little more follow-up on that because I'm quite positive that Edwardsville is not assessing a pilot. It's BPU assessing a pilot on Edwardsville's usage, and same with Bonner Springs.
Yeah, well, so we, every year as part of the budget process, the commission approves the pilot percentage. It's the percentage of gross revenues generated by the BPU.
Which is about 11.9%.
That's right. So as a commission, you all approve that every year. So it's actually the UG that assesses it, not the BPU. So if the Edwardsville and Bonner Springs cities also do that, then it'd be, but I don't know the answer to your question.
Well, I would like to know that answer because,
I thought BPU was only for, our pilot was only for KCK.
Bonner
It
Springs.
is, it is only for KCK.
It may be, but Bonner Springs and Edwardsville pay a pilot to BPU for Edwardsville specifically pays for water. And I'm wondering where those dollars go. So that's my question. I mean, somebody,
They don't go to
the
us.
collector is the unified government,
No,
or they ultimately get it.
no,
Yes.
no.
Okay. I'd like to get some answers on it, on that, if somebody can do some follow-up on that, because I do know that to be the case. Thanks.
Commissioner, I'm sorry. I keep pestering you about this. Does the city of Bonner Springs not have their own city water department? So Bonner Springs
Bonner's. the
Who
way
in
I
Bonner
understand it,
Springs
and I
is
just
getting
had
a BPU bill, I guess is my question.
They do not. They buy, at times, they buy bulk water from BPU in the summertime whenever their demands are increased.
So if I were
And
a
they are
resident,
taxed a pilot on that bulk water that they purchase.
they being the city of Bonner.
City of Bonner
If I were a
Springs.
Bonner resident, I'm not receiving a BPU bill.
That's correct.
And if, as an Edwardsville resident, you receive a BPU bill for your water
Water usage.
and on it you see a pilot.
That is
that
correct.
correct?
That is correct.
And I think the question lies with our Public Works Division and the Board of Public Utilities as far as where is that pilot dollar going?
Right.
Yeah.
Because if it's a city tax, and it is, then it should not be levied on an Edwardsville
Correct.
resident or the
That
city
is-
of Bonner
That is
Springs.
correct. And that's what I was getting at.
That's what we've got to get to
Yes.
is,
Thank you.
That's fine.
that
I mean,
billing.
I'm happy to talk to the chief financial
Okay.
officer. I can just tell you that if there was, like, what you're inferring would not pass the mustard with the auditors. So, I mean, I'm almost positive what you're inferring isn't happening, but we'll be happy to look into it.
Commissioner Markley?
I just wanted to jump back to the kind of two discussions, one about that personnel line item and then some of Commissioner Bynum's discussion to verify, are there raises included in your assumption? Like you talked about the union contracts, but I guess I'm saying going forward in those out years, obviously, we don't necessarily know for all of those contracts what those look like. Is there an assumed increase for salaries across the board in those out years?
Yeah, all the contracts, as they have been adopted, have been incorporated into the estimates. And then the out years after the contracts assumes 3.3% for everybody.
Thanks. That's what I needed.
Yeah. I used to have it 2.3%, but I felt that was a little too light. So I moved it to 3.3. Would you mind if I move forward? Because we have a lot to cover.
Mayor, before we do, Commissioner Burrows has his hand raised.
Commissioner Burrows?
No, that's fine, Mayor. I'll wait later on, let her get going.
You can proceed.
Thank you so much. So, all right, so this is the city general fund. Looks a lot similar to the combined, but this is a city general fund. Now, I'm going to go back just real quick. So, as Commissioner Townsend mentioned, see, do I have a little light here? Oh, yeah, good. So, as you can see, that net margin, let's focus on that just real briefly. That net margin here is 5.2 for the combined, is 5.2 for 2023, and then 1.6, and then it starts to become positive, right? If we go to the city, you'll notice that net margin is actually 9.4 in the deficit. What that tells you is that the county general fund, it has a positive net margin in 2023. And that's because it's very reliant on property tax. So, and property tax is growing at a much better clip than sales tax at the moment. And so into the future, the city general fund, the bottom line here is that the city general fund is, kind of limping along right now. Let's put it that way. All right. And so, given the current revenue structure it has, it's kind of limping along and it's eating into its fund balance to the tune of roughly $9 to $8 million a year. You can see. And so, of course, that you can't do that for very long. You start running out of money. And so it's a projection that we're going to end up in a negative position. Now this assumes that we continue with our current operating state and our current revenue structure. So, of course, we're always looking for more efficiencies. We don't want to raise taxes, of course. We want to become more and more efficient, use technology to the greatest extent possible. This is just an assumption of our current state right now. Okay. So, of course, we're never going to let this happen. But it's just a demonstration of the difference between the two funds. All right. So like the county general fund, as you can see, it's in a positive position. 4, 6, 8. Boy, it's really doing well because the assessed value is growing. And so it's much more reliant on property tax. And, all right.
Commissioner McKiernan.
Thank you. And I just want to address that really briefly. Your model builds in as an assumption that a total assessed valuation will continue to increase at some fractional percentage every year.
6%.
Right. So you've built in
Mhm.
an anticipation of total valuation growing regardless of what we do with the mill rate.
Right.
There is an underlying assumption that valuation on the whole will grow. It is entirely possible, based on history of as little as 15 years ago, that that won't happen. It is entirely possible that valuation could at some point in the future drop, which would then further complicate the haziness of models. And so I just want everybody to remember that you have built in what today is a reasonable assumption for looking ahead, but there is no guarantee that those assumptions will hold true.
So graphically, this is how the current combined general fund looks with the city, county, and the parks general fund combined together. And this is the not the cash balance, mind you. This is the modified accrual balance that is reflected in the CAFR, or the annual comprehensive financial report. And I had the 2022 in orange just to give you a feeling for like that's where we are today. And anything going forward is a projection. Below, by the way, and down below is how much the 17% reserve should be, 17% being the 2-month reserve. And then what percentage, like Commissioner Stikes asked, what is the percentage, the actual percentage. And so at the moment at 2023, we're projecting that assuming that we're going to spend all of that revenue replacement money that we received from the feds in 2022, then at the end of 2022, we will have the same fund balance as we did before the pandemic. Okay, that's how I figured out how much revenue replacement is. So you can see how it's 20%, 20.1% in 19, and now it's 20.1% in 2022. So that's how I came up with that revenue replacement figure. Then going forward, given the assumptions, it's at 18.3%, then it drops to 17, and then it pretty much stays around that level. So from a combined general fund, things are looking pretty good. But then if you switch to just the city, you notice that, things are not looking too good for the city. And given the current state, right? And then for the county, things are looking real good, right? Now, so, given the current, structure, there's an opportunity to do some shifting and to discuss not only how we can become more efficient on the city side, or perhaps, eliminate programs that are of lower priority through priority-based budgeting, or to figure out a way to provide services more efficiently, as well as grow our revenues through other means, right? So there are, a variety of things that we can do to address this deficit. And there's also a variety of things we can do in terms of tax relief on this side too. So, okay, so getting to the nitty gritty here, right? There's been a couple of potential revenue adjustments that have been brought forward to you previously. And so the purpose of this meeting is to demonstrate to you, given the baseline, what these revenue adjustments would look like. Okay. Now, keep in mind, we just listed them as A, B, and C, right? So keep in mind that if you we're just going to show the impact in isolation of each one. If you combine them together, then things get worse or better, you understand? So, and of course, there's many ways you could go about this. So, for example, if we were to do the revenue neutral, or if we were not to exceed the revenue neutral rate, then and kept and reduced our property tax mills to the level where we were collecting the same amount of revenue as in 23 as we did in 2022.
Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, I appreciate the detail, Kathleen. I think for us to look at these options and for them not to have anything commission generated is just not fair. We all, and I think I'm comfortable speaking with, we all want to cut property taxes, but to only have the option of keeping, right, the mill as it is, which we understand is burdensome for our constituents, or going revenue neutral and not having anything in between makes this conversation really, really difficult to have, because we are going off of assumptions that has no displayed political will. I don't want to waste everybody's time. I don't want to waste the public's time. Kathleen, if you could please give us another, what is a third option at some point where we could look at 1 mil, a 2 mil decrease, but to say nothing or revenue neutral, in my opinion, is just not fair.
So the purpose of this meeting today is just to demonstrate the impact if you were to do this, and then to make a decision on or discussion and give us direction so that we can plan the budget calendar.
My direction, and not to cut you off, but my direction would be, can we get another option?
Yes. So
that would be my direction, somewhere between 1 and 3 mil, not no cut or revenue neutral. To me, those are non-starters that do not have political will. I understand, Kathleen, it's not on you, but Mayor, we've made this clear. We've made this clear.
So
we've made it very, very clear.
We have 3 months and 6 budget workshops ahead of us. And during those workshops, we can present to you exactly how many mills you want to cut and where. Today, we're just looking at the revenue neutral rate because we want to plan the budget calendar.
I'm going to start with our administrator and then right into Commissioner Ramirez and then right into Commissioner McKiernan.
And Mayor, Commissioner Burrows as well online in that order somewhere.
So I just, Cheryl Harrison Lee, Interim County Administrator. So Commissioner, there's one thing that the reason why you have this, there's one thing that's driving the calendar for the budget is if you are going revenue neutral, then the budget would need to be adopted earlier. If you're not, and you're going to look at then different options like a 1 mil, a 2 mil, or 3 mil, that gives us more time to work through the budget. So what the CFO is trying to get a decision on is if we are taking this off the table, then what we do then is that relaxes the budget schedule for the staff. And then instead of having to be on this aggressive schedule of July, we have until the fall, and then we would work through 1, 2, and 3. So what we're trying to figure out is what the budget schedule needs to look like. And I think I'm hearing from you, you would like to look at relaxing it to, yeah, I mean, yes.
So you don't want to see the impact? Don't you want to see it?
It's worth their time. Honestly.
I don't want to go through this.
Okay.
And you know, I'm looking at the pilot, which is the other thing, and reduced by half. You know, it's like an elephant. Right now, the elephant's in the room and we can't see each other because this isn't our idea. I want our ideas input. I want us to say, this is what we want. I don't want to see something that's not going to happen. Because I don't think there's enough support to that happen.
Okay.
And my frustration is here we are. She's got 40 some odd slides or whatever.
Well, a lot of those slides are just for your.
Okay, but we are slide happy around here.
Yeah.
You know, we need to figure out a way to minimize the slides, get the information out there as fast as possible. I don't want to be here till 11:30 at night, and I would rather not see that graph again.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Agree with everything that Commissioner Kane, Commissioner Davis.
I don't want to be part of this conversation if we're going to continue to talk about something where the commission has given you clear direction that we don't want to go down that path. We're constantly hearing revenue neutral, sales tax. We've given you the direction as a full body. I would say a super majority of the body has said that's not what we want to do. So I ask going forward, we drop this for the moment. We actually work together as a commission and do what we need to do, extend the deadline, extend our calendar, and get back to the work that we're supposed to do. Because I feel like at this point, we just keep getting pushed and pushed and pushed to like an idea that we don't like. And I'm starting to get frustrated with it. So I ask that we drop any conversation or talk about revenue neutral anymore, a sales tax, and actually get to the job of compromise and having an actual conversation other than being told what we need to do. Thank you.
Commissioner Bynum. Do you have a question? Commissioner McKiernan.
Thank you. Kathleen, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner McKiernan.
I completely agree with everything that has been said here. I think if I could, I think one of the reasons we're setting this up is this is a possibility. Even if it's not a supported possibility, this is a possibility. And having confronted it, having outlined it, having wrapped our brains around what it would mean, then we decide we want this possibility or we don't. What I'm pretty clearly hearing right now is we don't want this possibility. But what I wonder about, and this is probably too geeky for most everybody except just me, but I mean, there is a spreadsheet behind all of this. There are assumptions cooked into that spreadsheet. And it should be possible for us to do a little bit of divining, as they say when they used to use the rod looking for water, to make adjustments in the assumptions of the model and see those results really in real time. And then ask, if we make the assumption of 3% salary increase every year, then this is what it would do. And it would populate all those cells, because I've seen behind the scenes of Kathleen's spreadsheet and it is a marvel in operation. And so it is possible for us, I would suggest a possibility that we could actually get that spreadsheet up on the screen and she could tinker behind the scenes and we could see what it would really look like in real time.
If you remember, several years ago, we broke you into groups and gave you interactive models, each one of you.
I didn't like that one. I wanted us all to come together and look at one common graph rather than go off to separate rooms and do our own. But it is a possibility. And there are assumptions. I mean, we've made, for example, an assumption of 3.5% increase on salaries on an ongoing basis. But what I'm not clear on is what's our assumption in terms of workforce? Does it stay static? Does it decrease? Does it increase? If it does any of those things, by what amount? If it's static, how does that meet our needs? Does it meet our needs? Does it not? And I think those are the avenues that I would suggest we all want to go down, is exploring the possibilities. That's a non-starter. Okay, change that number. Now let's move on to a different one. So that's, I think, a possibility is to bring the model and we can dynamically adjust it and fine tune until the picture comes in the way we like it.
Sounds great.
That's a suggestion.
Thank you. Commissioner Burrough.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm smiling because I sense the passion among my colleagues in reference to the budget process. It can be quite daunting and it demands full attention and a commitment. And we have obligations mandated by law that we as a governing body have to meet. That will be our baseline funding mechanism. If you put that up against the revenue and we identify exactly what it is we have to fund. And then we have ordinance and resolutions that we have to fund through those particular items. And that captures the additional expenses that we're responsible for. After that, it's the things that are going to be difficult, the services that we want to provide, the requests that we receive, all the other incidentals we're going to have to prioritize. I'm excited to see that people are willing to drill down into this budget. And if I heard Kathleen correctly, our county side is a little healthier than the city side. But if you remember correctly, last budgeting process, we moved a lot of the expenses over to the county. And so the mill rate that we can reduce could be on the county side. But before we go, I actually identifying mill reductions, I don't disagree that we have to give strong consideration to what it is we collectively want to do as leaders of this community. And as I stated, I stand ready to help wherever I can and assist those that want to really drill down into budget and make some tough decisions. But this budget, I just have one request of Kathleen as we move forward. Kathleen, I would like to know what the combined city-county budget was starting 6 years ago. Sure. And what this combined city-county budget is today. And pull out the ARPA funds off to the side as a total. Don't include them in those totals moving forward. So if it was hypothetically 300 million 6 years ago and it's 420 million now, you pull the ARPA funds out, it sets at 402 million. I would like to see the growth in our combined budget over the last 6 years to where we are today. And that should give us somewhat of a picture as to, are we spending effectively? And if we're not, then we have to reduce our costs. And that means cutting spending. And with that, Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Commissioner McKiernan.
Thank you, Mayor. As much as I want to bring that model in and drill down, I'm going to suggest what I suggested 2 weeks ago, that all of this talk is really premature because we have not yet sharpened our focus on what level of service provision we want to be able to provide to the citizens of the city and the county. And until we focus on the level of services that we want to provide, this is really just an academic exercise of models and numbers. I would suggest that what we really need to do is finish our conversation with the Kansas Leadership Center and with each other, and with the aid of our survey, whose results should be coming very soon. And we should then sharpen our focus. And once we've sharpened our focus on what is the level of services that our citizens want to receive and that we want to provide, it really gives us a lot more clarity on what the numbers have to look like. And then if we decide that we want to cut a spending number, for example, we can truly confront what that means in terms of service delivery to the people of the city and the county. And that's where we'll get the real test of whether or not the numbers match our desires. So I would suggest that we need to really keep going on what's the level of service provision.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, this is for Mayor, for Cheryl, for our CFO, Financial. What further direction, what clearer direction do you all need specifically regarding going revenue neutral? Like what more needs to be said? What do we need to do to convey the political will of that not happening this year?
Cheryl Harrison Lee, Interim County Administrator. So I think I've heard that the commission would like to explore a budget that's not revenue neutral. So what that means, Kathleen, if you could please go to the budget calendar, because then we can talk about what, and I'm talking about the one that looks at the fall adoption. If you
Okay, so this is the.
got that at the back. I
I
just want to show them what.
This is the calendar.
Because what that means, Commissioner, now is we would be looking.
Here it is.
So previously we showed you a budget calendar with an adoption in July. That was because the state requires the budget adoption earlier if you're going to revenue neutral. So what this calendar shows, if you're not going to go revenue neutral, your new budget adoption date would be in August. And so we would then be working through this scenario of looking at the community survey results at our next meeting, continuing to look at the CMIP projects, and then starting those budget workshops and working with you to get alternatives. And if you're wanting to model 1, 2, and 3 as part of this process, we will model 1, 2, and 3 mills and show you that.
Okay, so what, because I'm for this, is there anybody who is against this particular calendar? Okay, so again, I want to ask what further direction, Ms. Harrison-Lee, Mayor, right, CFO, what further direction do you all need so that we follow that calendar?
None.
So, I don't need any, we're clear. The only other thing I would ask is, I know that Mr. O'Malley has spoken with everyone except 3 people. I would like to get the feedback from the other 3, because what he is trying to complete is to roll up the themes of the kinds of priorities, and that will change. If you could go back to slide 1 for me, please. It's like,
Well, the other thing we want to get direction is on the timing.
yes, we want to get correction on this, but I just want to close this conversation on,
I hear you. Yeah.
okay.
Mayor, Commissioner Stites has had his hand up online for a while.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Stites.
Commissioner Stites, District 7. One of the things that was asked about, and I think it was Commissioner McKiernan, it's been a while ago, that this current proposal assumed no new hiring. Is that correct?
Yeah, current.
So our police department that's down, our fire department that's
No, I didn't include vacancies. So it's the budgeted level. Yeah.
How many
This doesn't include any new staff.
how many vacancies do we have right now?
Well, gosh, that there's a lot.
I mean, between 1 and 500. Just give me, is there closer to 300,
3.
200?
Closer to 3.
So
That's across the
3,
entire UG, not just the general fund.
so 300 open spots.
Do you know the exact number, Alan?
And that's,
Okay,
Yeah.
it's roughly 3.
and I'm 300. I mean, I'm not trying to get down to the exact number, but, and we're saying that, so our level of service is going to decline by 300 employees that we're not willing to hire. And, man, I'm not for that. I mean, we deserve, our citizens deserve, the services that they, expect, and they can't provide that. We can't provide those services without employees being hired. And then the last thing that I'll bring up is, because it kind of floored me, and when I heard it, and I don't even know what it totally means. It says, somebody said that we shifted expenses from the city side to the county.
Yeah.
What the heck does that mean?
So last year, as part of the budget process, we actually, the year before, 2020, during the pandemic, we did an analysis of all of the administrative and governmental type departments that provide services for both city and county functions. And what we found, so in the past, the county general fund has been the fund that's been in financial trouble, just so you know. It's only been improved because the housing market has really driven up assessed value, much more so than in the past. So there's historically, governmental administrative activities have been under budgeted on the county side in order to help the county fund out. And so we did an analysis and figured out that the city's residents were shouldering more of the burden of the administrative costs of the unified government than they should have. And so there was a reallocation of those costs so that it was appropriately done based on the level of service of each department with respect to the city and the county residents, and the costs were shifted. There were some costs that were shifted from county to city, but mostly they were city to county.
And that was an internal analysis or an external?
We provided that as part of the budget process in an open forum to all the commissioners, and they approved it, and yeah, and it was adopted as part of the budget.
Internal, not external, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner McKiernan.
Thank you. We have 300 open positions right now. And are we actively seeking to fill all 300 of those right now?
We are not actively seeking to fill all those. One of the things that we're trying to do is do an evaluation or an assessment of service levels, where ways that we can be more efficient, looking at technology, assessing what's needed in the various departments. So public safety positions are not positions that are impacted by this. It's all of the other positions throughout the organization.
But all of those positions were budgeted as a function of the 2022 budget, which we all approved last year. So they're previously budgeted, and now we're making a decision not to fill a budgeted position. That is effectively a mid-course budget correction that doesn't come back before this body. And that concerns me a great deal.
Well, one of the things that we are looking at trying to do is see in departments where we are lean, do we need positions in other departments? Do we need them filled? Do we have them at the right level? Do we have the right position? Do we have opportunities for career ladders? Do we have opportunities to be efficient? Do we need additional positions? So it's really an overall evaluation and assessment of the organization to determine what's really needed for those positions.
Okay, I absolutely understand that exercise of going through and determining right sizing for all of our functions. But can we say that service delivery has not suffered as a function of 300 open positions? Is that a safe bet to make or not a safe bet to make?
I don't know that we have a way of tracking what the delivery is, because we don't really have performance measures that we are monitoring and benchmarking against.
Get your license plates at 82nd State, and then you'll know if services have.
Well, I kind of already knew that, but I thought I'd just ask the question. What it really does concern me, though, what really concerns me is that is a budget adopted by 11 voting members of this government. The mayor and 10 commissioners voted to establish that budget. Those are budgeted positions. Those lines were allocated as a part of that. And if we are making a choice not to fill those, then we are making a choice to amend that previously voted on budget. And please, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but that certainly seems like what it is we're doing. And that concerns me very much, because no one of us 11 has the power to unilaterally amend any decision made by the 11 of us. And so that really does concern me.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley.
I agree. And then I would just mention as well, when we have those vacant positions, that means there are other employees that are having to do that additional work. So we're piling on to the employees that are here as we're trying to save back from hiring those positions, which doesn't obviously improve the morale of our staff that are remaining during this time. Not only that, but it's a horrible time to be trying to hire. So the faster we can get those positions posted so we can try to fill them, probably the better. And then one last thing, and this isn't, maybe it's a little off topic, but I think that several of us have mentioned it privately and I haven't seen anything yet. Please do not take this offensively, Ms. Harrison Lee, but when we hired Ms. Harrison Lee, several commissioners mentioned having a nationwide search process in advance of the end of Ms. Harrison Lee's contract, because if Ms. Harrison Lee wins the lottery and decides not to come back to work, or she just doesn't want to apply to continue with us, we can't wait until the last day of her contract to start that search. So I would just say, for me, and I think from other commissioners I've spoken to, we'd like to know, Mayor, what that timeline is going to look like, because it seems like we need to be getting that started if we're going to have something decided by the time Ms. Harrison Lee's contract is fulfilled.
To answer that question, I haven't crossed that bridge yet, and I'm not prepared to. I will definitely let you know. Right now, we're going through a very spirited budget conversation, and I like it, because these type of debates need to happen. I like everybody's input, and that input is going to continue, and your input is valuable. Ms. Harrison Lee is working very diligently to make sure that your input is included. I think the message is clear tonight that you all want to move away from the revenue neutral. I respect that. I'm sure that staff respects that, as well as Ms. Harrison Lee. The whole purpose of this is try to get a gauge of interest from the commission on where you want to land as far as what direction you want staff to go in. So to answer the questions that were out there, yes, I think that the message is clear. You do not want revenue neutral, that you want to look at other options. You want to extend this process until the fall, which is definitely fine, because ultimately you all have to vote on this. But I'd like to say that really I said it last time, and I'm going to say it again. I just ask that you all please talk to your constituents, just as I have. And really, you've got some hard decisions to make when you talk about the pilot, tax decreases, the mill levy, as well as what type of services do you want to provide. And really, that has to be community driven from our community. I agree with Commissioner McKiernan. This is just a conversation. Nobody's being asked to vote on anything tonight. Nobody's being asked to do anything definitive. This process is at its very onset. And as we go through this process, we just need to make sure that we support our staff and our administrator, because they are working hard. I've heard it time and time again that what you see on the screen is the mayor's proposal. That's not completely true, but that's a conversation that I can have with each one of you individually. The bottom line is we have to make sure that we are meeting the needs of our community. There are a lot of infrastructure needs, our staff, when you talk about contractually and making sure that we take care of our staff. But the reality is, and I'm going to be frank with you, and I'll let Ms. Harrison Lee speak briefly to it. A city of this size, compared to other cities with the amount of personnel that we have, I'm going to tell you now, when you talk about a $1.7 billion budget between the BPU and the unified government, we are going to have to start making some hard budgetary decisions when it comes to staffing and what type of services that we need to provide. And that's the direction we're trying to push this commission, especially when we talk about taxes and the BPU. And I'll say it again, I've talked to developers. They want to come here, but they're not going to come here with burdensome fees, with high taxes, high BPU, and a bureaucracy that makes doing development projects not fit their business model. Those are the types of things that we're looking at and correct. And why is that important? Because we've got to expand our tax base. We've heard that for years. We've got to bring in more rooftops and more brick and mortar businesses. And then these larger businesses that come in here, we got to make sure that they pay their fair share. So those are the types of things that we need to talk about. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation, and it's respectful. And I like seeing this. But it is clear, and we will definitely, I'll work with the administrator and we'll be working with staff to make sure that your input is really captured in a way that better reflects a move away from revenue neutral and a move towards what the combined commission would like to see towards our end goal of trying to at least allow you all to make an informed decision on this budgetary process. So hopefully that answered that question. You can proceed, Ms. Von Achen.
Mayor, before you adjourn as well, Commissioner Burrough has had his hand up for a while and we're getting short on time here.
Commissioner Burrough.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate your closing comments, Mayor. They were well stated. I want to go back to a comment that was made by one of the former commissioners that they want to move away from the revenue neutral. I think that's the easy thing to do. I'm going to hold myself to that timeline because I know the specter of property tax discussion on the state level and how it affects what we're going to do moving forward. I'm going to hold myself, Mayor, accountable to the revenue neutral rate. I'm going to look at this budget as having to make those tough decisions. And I would just ask the body, please understand, it's not that I disagree with you. It's not that I don't want other services or other programs. It's just that I believe it can be done. And once we're able to visually see it, I think it's a lot easier to move forward at the next budget cycle and be more understanding and more creative as to how we craft our budget, build our budget moving forward. And the reason why I asked for those total numbers from 6 years ago to today is I think you'll be surprised at the amount of revenue we've taken in and what we have to show for it. And so with that, Mayor, I just want to say I truly appreciate the comments and the opportunity to be part of this discussion this evening. And I just wish I was there with all of you. Unfortunately, I can't be, but thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to let our administrator follow up with that question. When you talk about cities that are comparable size to the city of Kansas City, Kansas, how we measure up with our personnel, our salaries, as well as our debt and a tirade of other things that are very challenging for this commission to have to consider.
Cheryl Harrison Lee, Interim County Administrator. So one of the things that's really important for us to look at, I think, as we evaluate the organization is jurisdictions of our size, services, budget size, number of employees, structure, how we compare to them in terms of, staff at the executive level, as well as staff throughout the organization. And so part of that evaluation that we're doing is looking at those jurisdictions and looking at our numbers and seeing, is 2,100 the right number for us, or is that a lower number when you look at employees per capita?
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
Kathleen, can you show slide number 6? Okay, so right now, in 2021, our meal was 15th in the state with the number, 25 top cities, is that? Yeah. So we were middle of the pack for that. How would then that rank change if we had all of the cities in the state of Kansas? Would it improve? I don't know. I'd like to know.
My guess is that smaller cities have.
So even with what you've shown us, we're right in the middle of the pack. And I think this is something that needs to be shared more with our community when we hear repeatedly that we're the highest taxed community in the state. We're not, by far. And you have shown us this and shown us this and shown us this. And I don't know how it doesn't resonate with some of us. I mean, we clearly are not the highest taxed city as it relates to mill levy. So when we talk about lowering mill levies, now that may improve it. Maybe we get down to be number 10 or number 8 or number 9. But what does that do to the other side of the equation as it relates to services and things as it relates to staffing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? I just think that this piece in terms of communication needs to be stated clearly from this body to the community that we are not the highest taxed jurisdiction. So as mayor, administrator, and those that direct the narrative from the UG to the community, we need to continue to state this. We're not what we are accused of being, what we are alleged as being, in terms of fleecing our constituents. We're not doing that. It's not happening.
So the Johnson County's assessed value is 10 times ours. So one mill for Johnson County generates 10 times more than it does. So you know.
Exactly.
So if you measure a house, the bill that you get for a house in Johnson County, it's going to be less. But then on the other hand, you won't be able to buy a house for the same market value in Johnson County than you would here. So
Exactly.
It just depends on how you compare.
Right.
And we're next to a very wealthy county.
We are, indeed.
One of the wealthiest in the country.
So anyway, I just want us to continue to remember this thing. And then looking at the county side, oh my God, we ought to be touting this. I'm done.
Thank you. We're going to have to conclude this meeting and prepare for our regular session. So this meeting is adjourned, and we will shortly begin our regular commission meeting.